Hi, and welcome to the show. Subscribe at kevinmd.com/podcast. Today, we welcome back Jessie Mahoney, pediatrician and coach. Today's Kevin MD article is Why Doctors Must Stop Waiting and Reclaim Their Lives. Jessie, welcome back to the show.
Nice to be here.
All right, tell us what this latest article is about.
So this article is about waiting and how we are trained in the medical system to just wait and wait and wait. And it occurred to me recently, not quite sure why it took so long, but that we're trained to wait in residency and we're trained to wait this sort of delayed gratification. But we are also trained to wait once we finish residency. We're trained to wait to have our families and wait to move wherever it is. And then we're trained to wait for our healthcare organizations. We're continued to ask to wait. We're great waiters, apparently, but this idea that we should be waiting for the system to be fixed or waiting for our organization to address X, Y, or Z problem. And what became clear to me is that it's really this willingness to wait that's allowing so many things to happen, and the system's benefiting by us waiting. We're waiting for them to, we wait for them to staff up before we can take our vacation. And so it's this awareness of waiting and the impact of waiting can change our whole experience of practicing medicine. It's like, what are we waiting for?
And how does that affect physicians, this constant cycle of waiting? And I'm going to infer that there's an undercurrent of self-sacrifice as well, right? A continuous loop of self-sacrifice and waiting. How does that affect physicians?
Well, I think we're taught that waiting is loyalty or is professionalism. Many times physicians will speak up about how things should change, and maybe we don't do it in the best way because we're exhausted and depleted. But I think that then people are unprofessional if they don't wait. And I remember always being told, well, that it can't happen that fast. It just can't happen. And so then we end up literally filling in the gaps and stopgapping. So the result of this on physicians is tremendous depletion and burnout. And in many systems, short staffing is a huge issue right now. And so we're always taught like, oh, you'll just have to fill in or see extra patients until we hire up. And we take that on as our job because we take on the patient care responsibility as our job. And yet our willingness to wait until it gets fixed has this huge cost. Many people sort of begin to postpone their lives and postpone what they really want. And I see many of us where we could get so willing to wait that we actually feel stuck. It's like, well, I don't even know what I'm waiting for, but I'm here doing this thing. And it's very hard to give yourself permission to stop waiting.
I always say that physicians, they take the Hippocratic Oath and, first do no harm, and patient care comes first. But MBAs and administrators and pretty much everyone else in our healthcare system, they don't abide by the same oath. And subsequently, physicians are always the last line of defense.
Yeah. Well, we're waiting for healthcare organizations to treat us in the same way that we take care of patients, which it's not set up in that way. And in fact, many of us don't even include ourselves in that Hippocratic Oath of do no harm. And so not only do the people who are above us in the hierarchies they didn't take the Hippocratic Oath, but we are not including ourselves in it. So it becomes this very much one-way street. Again, starting with we can wait to sleep, we can wait to eat, we can wait to do all the things in our lives. We just get used to it. And this sort of endurance and waiting are actually rewarded. But then we do that the rest of our career. And as a leader, actually, it occurred to me that we are also asked to wait. We're asked to run the department and wait for these days more money, or wait for different political changes, or wait for this, or wait for that. And that just becomes part of our job is how do we function while we're waiting, as opposed to flipping into agency. Okay, well, ask better questions. What can we do now? What can we do? Okay, we don't have all this money, but what can we do? What can we change? And that is what we bring to patient care. We actually don't wait when it comes to patients. We don't say, let's just wait for that new chemo to come out, right? What can we do today? What can we do tomorrow? And so we have this sort of dual approaches, and can we take this same approach to, what we matter as much as anyone else in the system? And I would offer that our not waiting might actually be some of the solution when we take agency and say, well, we can't wait for this. So what are we going to do today? What am I going to do? And sometimes it's permission, giving ourselves permission to make change, or ourselves permission to just decide we're not going to wait as a leader. It doesn't mean you're going against all of the
Yeah.
rules. You're just getting creative and finding solutions. But when we've waited for everyone else, we're still waiting years and years and years
Yeah.
later, right, for the system to fix itself.
And you shared in your Kevin MD article your own personal story of waiting, right? So tell us about that.
Oh, yeah. I waited forever. I kept, well, I mean, there were a few things. One, I was someone, and I think this resonates with many, many leaders in medicine, that the people who don't like waiting, I'm one of them, step into leadership roles and try to make change. And then as a leader, we're asked to wait because it can't happen yet, because systems are so big, which is actually to some degree
Yeah.
true. So I used to tell myself this story that, my organization would change 3 to 5 years after I thought something was a good idea is when it could potentially be implemented. But I recognized that that actually got me to wait longer. I was just like, oh, well, I just have to wait 3 to 5 years.
Yeah.
And so then I would kind of park things and find that I would lose energy and enthusiasm and that passion and purpose, or get frustrated. And so when you finally decide that you're not going to wait, that you're going to do the thing that lights you up. And again, it doesn't mean you're going against the grain. You're just getting creative or giving yourself permission to bring your ideas to the forefront and see what happens. All of a sudden, everything shifts. And I saw that in my own life. I shifted into doing physician wellness work full time, which was part of my job in my bigger organization, because I thought I can't wait. The answer was we can't move fast
Mhm.
enough within an organization, which I 100% agree with. It's not that they didn't want to, but when you decide not to wait and you do things on your own, you can be much more nimble.
Yeah.
And so it's really giving yourself permission that that's okay to do. And I think so many physicians are so resourced and creative and just phenomenal humans who could bring change if we stopped waiting.
Yeah. So one of the biggest way to break out of the cycle, like you said, is to stop waiting.
Yeah,
Now, it's a mindset issue, right? Because
yeah,
physicians have been trained to wait ever since
yeah,
they were pre-medical students.
yeah.
What are some ways that you coach physicians to break out of that waiting cycle and not push up against that waiting boundary?
Yeah. Well, the first thing is to recognize it, which is why I wrote the article, right? If we don't realize that we're trained to wait, then we just keep waiting for something and waiting for permission or waiting for that job or waiting to not be afraid of the change. So the first thing is to notice that you're waiting. The second piece is really working on your nervous system,
Hmm.
because if you are afraid of the consequences of not waiting, and if our culture says that it's professionalism to wait and it's glorified to wait, and that's what a good doctor does, it's incredibly hard to switch that with a nervous system that's sensing danger and
Yeah.
fear. And so that is really working on mindfulness, working on breathing techniques, resting, refilling, because we can't change from a place of depletion or sympathomimetic storm. And then it's really working on your mindset and recognizing that you can potentially bring even greater good
Yeah.
and greater impact to your patients and or your families, that we deserve this. I think many of us have sort of decided, well, I'm here to serve 100%, and therefore we don't deserve this. And yet that's where we get into these unsustainable loops. And so that piece of it is beginning to work on your mindset and to decide that you're waiting for permission that's not coming. We're waiting for someone coming to save the healthcare system that's not coming. And so it's, what do you want to do? Where's your agency
Yeah.
for your own life? I think we don't realize that we've given away that agency and we're just showing up sort of fitting in the mold. And so the work is really to recognize it. And then it's tremendous courage, honestly, to decide to pivot. We get stuck in the fear. We're trained that the discomfort and the fear means it's dangerous and we shouldn't do it, when I would argue it's unfamiliar. And of course, not waiting
Yeah.
is unfamiliar because we've been waiting our whole lives in medicine. It's like you have to do this, then you do this, then you do this. And so what I see is when people decide they're not going to wait, because we're such over functioners and incredibly resourced, we can actually make tremendous change very quickly once we make that decision. The other piece that's really challenging in making the switch is trusting ourselves, because we were taught not to trust ourselves and to look outside ourselves for external validation, which when you stop waiting, you're not going to get in the beginning because the culture says you should wait.
Tell us a success story where you successfully coached a physician to stop waiting, and what would breaking out of that waiting cycle look like in real life?
Yeah, so I had a physician a couple years ago who really started as sort of a victim of the system, waiting for the things, nothing was changing. And it takes, I would say, several months of real work on yourself, exploring your beliefs, exploring the thoughts about what you're bringing as opposed to what you've been trained to think. And then once you start to believe that, wow, I actually am a very capable, high functioning human who has a lot to bring, you can actually decide that despite the discomfort, you can change things. And so this physician actually changed jobs and moved and changed her relationships. Like everything can happen quite quickly once you decide, because there's so many things we have put off. And often it's that cascade of momentum.
Mhm.
Once you recognize that you're still waiting and you don't want to be waiting, like you're waiting for life to begin, and here you are, it is your life, then the change can happen quite quickly. And I see that quite often. Some people, they have to do a tiny shift and a tiny shift, like a 1% change,
Yeah.
and it's like dipping a toe in. And we're all starting where we are and have different life experiences and different nervous systems that we're bringing to it. And while it might seem like the nervous system, what does that have to do with waiting? We can't change out of these patterns if we feel threatened. And so we've been trained to wait because that's what you are supposed to
Yeah.
do.
Yeah.
And we don't like to get in trouble. We don't like to rock the boat. And yet I would offer that when we stop waiting is actually where a lot of these solutions we're waiting for in medicine come from. And it is a strategic shift. I think that many people want to make the change. They want to stop waiting. So they start speaking up in more of like a bull in a china shop way.
Yeah.
And that doesn't get us anywhere. And so it's stopping waiting in a very strategic way where you're working on your physiology, you're working on how you advocate, you're working on what is it that I can bring, what creative ideas do I have. And if you have brought them to your administration and they're not working, it's like, well, how else can I make a shift? Maybe I need to build my own practice, which you see a lot. Maybe I need to move to a different location. Sometimes it's just getting unstuck that shifts that momentum. And I think the thing that I keep coming back to here is it's the recognition that we're waiting for something, but we don't even know what we're waiting for. And that it's not actually better for us as humans or as the system to wait. I've been watching us wait in medicine for the solutions to come for 20 years. And I believe we have to be part of the solution. And as physicians, we have these great ideas. And so
Yeah.
if we were to stop waiting and to stop believing that it's our job to wait for someone else to make the decisions or for someone else to hire someone, then that's where the change will begin.
I like your bull in a china shop metaphor. When physicians had enough and they just can't take it anymore, they're often not the most diplomatic, right?
No, we are not. Yeah, we are not.
In an
Yeah,
administrative setting, right?
yeah.
So
So
being
stop waiting
strategic,
before that.
exactly, yes. So being more strategic, maybe stepping
Yes.
into leadership roles and maybe affecting change from within is the
Yeah.
more effective option.
Yeah, absolutely. The bull in the china shop also hasn't gotten us anywhere. And I think that comes from waiting too long, where we just don't know what else to do. It's really a reactionary approach. And so I think the power of this recognition, what are you waiting for? And, we're preserving the structure by waiting. Once we stop, we can be more thoughtful up front about, okay, well, how do I want to stop waiting? Where are the cracks where I can impact change? Or maybe I need to be somewhere else to impact change. And I would offer also that I think it takes support to do that,
Yeah,
not just because I'm someone who offers support, but because when I did it, I also needed support.
sure.
And I think that to have someone who understands how your mind works and the traps that we're getting ourselves into it's really a kind action and allows you to do it in a not bull in a china shop way.
We're talking to Jessie Mahoney, pediatrician and certified coach. Today's Kevin MD article is Why Doctors Must Stop Waiting and Reclaim Their Lives. Jessie, as always, let's end with take-home messages they want to leave with the Kevin MD audience.
I mean, my message would be to stop waiting, but to set yourself up well for success. And as you stop waiting, be thoughtful about the path forward and that amazing things might happen if you stop waiting and figure out what it is you want to bring to this world in medicine and beyond.
Jessie, as always, thank you so much for sharing your perspective and insight. Thanks again for coming back on the show.
My pleasure.